I have with me today Mr. David Grunau, Mr. Chris Miller, and Mr. Dean Bedford, all of whom were occupied with Polymetrics in the early days of its history.
To make it very succinct, at the end of about 5 years, I think we had 38 of the semiconductor companies all using Polymetrics RO. The pioneer was Hewlett-Packard and IBM, which I believe started the same month. And then we evolved from there into the other thing we'll talk about later. I think we put in the first seawater plant in Bermuda, Bermuda Airport, and we put in the first million-gallon RO brackish water plant in Venice, Florida. And we had a lot of other firsts, but nothing real exciting. And apparently we thought at that time, I mentioned that we thought a 100,000 gallon a day system was really big, and then we heard that a million gallons was really big, and then apparently the thing has got way beyond our imagination. But we were at the beginning.
You started off as an ultra-pure water company, which I didn't know. I thought you'd actually started off in brackish water and then gone to ultra-pure. So when did you start working in brackish water?
About the time you showed up, wasn't it?
Yeah, about 1972.
And one of the earliest plants you built, I think, was in Sarasota.
That was our first big
No,
one.
it was actually in Venice.
Yes. Was Venice the first one? Venice is the first one.
We sold a fair number of smaller plants, but the first major brackish water plant was Venice, and that was about 1 million gallons a day.
Right. And that was with DuPont B9 membranes.
Yes.
And you were one of the early licensees, I guess.
We were.
Yeah.
The problem we were having is that I think to get the low bid, they end up putting in triplex pumps when I think the original design called for quintuplex pumps. And the plant had a serious vibration problem. That was probably one of the more interesting part of my early assignments was, I said, looking at systems. The vibration was a huge problem back then with the seawater plants and metallurgy too. Fortunately, we did have hydrogen sulfide in the water at Paradise Island, so the corrosion wasn't as much of a problem, but it was more just vibration. And we learned a lot of, remember I was sending you those reports?
Yeah.
You got into things like just people cutting tubing, leaving the neck into it, you induce vibration that would, we had one morning I showed up to the facility, and you're talking about Eddie Ramsey. He goes, "Dean, you got to see this." He goes, "One of your B10s is on the other side of the building." And one of the ferrules had cut loose on one of the gyrolocks and launched a B10 probably 50 feet across the building.
I bet that was exciting.
That was, and especially it was one of the top ones, so it was, they weighed about 300 pounds trying to get it back up. It was tough.
Aqua Design.
83.
83. And Aqua Design was started strictly to do water sale projects.
We did a job for you on Rada.
That was DVD.
Yeah, the
DVT.
first project that we did was down in Bonaire, and it was a build, own, operate, and we became associated with Mitsui, and I digress a bit on the Mitsui connection, but our third partner, Mike Nelson, had purchased from Randy Truby cross-flow separations, which represented Torre in the United States, and Torre was associated very closely with Mitsui, and Mitsui wanted to sell membranes to us, and they financed the Bonaire project, and this was another short fuse project. It was the first build, own, operate that we did, and set us on a course for putting in plants. We had about 30 plants on 10 islands down in the Caribbean.
And you were responsible for taking care of them.
Yeah, we designed them, we built them, we owned them, or owned them in association with Mitsui, and operated them.
And then you had a water purchase agreement with
The,
whoever
with the
was
user.
buying the water.
Right,
Yeah, right.
hotels or
And
governments.
then, Dean, you went down, you moved to the Caribbean.
Yeah, I moved down in, I think it was 92. That specifically on to the British Virgin Islands, because there was, we had I think, David, you had worked out a number of deals with the government there, and we were trying to get plants built, and we at the time, I think we were quite thin, if I recall. Wasn't it? We were stretched really thin at the time. We had a lot of work going on.
You were talking about the work you were doing in the Caribbean and with Aqua Design. When did Polymetrics actually build its first seawater system?
It'd be in 1974 in Bermuda, at the Bermuda Airport, BAS, Bermuda Aviation Services.
And how big was that unit?
Boy, I think it had like perhaps 3 4-inch B10 membranes on it.
So it's quite small.
Yeah,
But
a couple
then
of thousand gallons.
shortly
a day.
thereafter, you built a large one in Saudi Arabia,
in Yanbu.
in
yes.
Yanbu, and that
That was
multi-million, wasn't it?
It was the first phase was 3,000 cubic meters. Second phase was 2,000, so a total of 5,000 cubic meters.
Yeah. You did some early work on energy recovery as well.
Right,
And,
at Polymetrics.
At Polymetrics,
We
right.
got a contract from what was then OWRT to work on a pressure exchange, flow work exchanger is now called. And actually the concept had been brought to Polymetrics by Bill Andrews. And it was an original idea of his, but somebody actually had patented this the device, and we were able to make a 2-cylinder out of about a B10 casings that we then
B10 shells.
B10 shells that we then didn't work out so well, and then we used aluminum bronze, about the same size. But we eventually put that into to BAS in Bermuda, and so I believe that was the first working flow work exchanger. In all of this, we're learning about what to do. You know, the problems when you get out in the field and you have to make the thing run, the problems become manifest and they have to be solved. And it isn't any great conceptual part, but it's solving a lot of little problems. And as Dean indicated, you know, there's corrosion problems, vibration problems, you know, things that don't show up on a conceptual diagram. You know, what do you do with the seals, for example, on that differential piston?
Do you have any regrets about taking that course? I mean, you could have done biological wastewater treatment, for example.
I can't imagine a more exciting, rewarding career. I mean, it's been absolutely exceeded all of my expectations, and I mean, part of it is that, I mean, you hear some of the stories here that of things that didn't go so well, but we were incredibly fortunate. I mean, a lot of people were difficult to deal with, but there's also an awful lot of people that went out of their way to help us out. And although there was, I would say, looking back on it, we took some incredible risks, probably unwarranted risks, and we're really fortunate that everything worked out. And but the people that we're working with, and the fun factor of actually being able to make decisions, like on this project in Yamba, was probably the largest project that I could have done as an individual, and being able to have your hands on everything. And we were given a free hand, absolute free hand, by the management of Polymetrics.